Yeah? We continue. This is last lecture, last class. I need to finish as much as I have out of this chapter. I already covered within section 2 entry modes, exporting and turnkey projects. The third one is licensing. So we got 6 modes of entry, and number 3 is licensing. Licensing. And the first big advantage is no development cost. You don't spend a lot of money. You license it to them, they do the work. They build it, they invest in it, they risk it. So little development cost associated with lower money. Sorry, with lower investment. With the lower cost comes lower risk, as I already explained. That's advantage number 2. Again, related to 1 and to 2, they are all intimately related. Number 3 is lower commitment. Commitment is in strategic commitment. So you are not significantly committing your resources. You let them commit their resources. With commitment, I had before, besides commitment, is that you retain flexibility. So advantage number 4, you retain as in remain flexible. Retain flexibility. So, and advantage number 5, you avoid barriers to entry, as in barriers to investment. Avoid various barriers. In other words, if you're a foreigner, they might not let you invest in the country, but you just license your technology and the local company will do it. So foreigners may face barriers which locals don't. You license it to the locals, and by this way you avoid various types of barriers. So it's a major advantage. And another advantage, which is rare but it could happen, is that you may have certain technology, you own it, it's yours, but you don't want to develop it yourself for whatever reason, okay? You might just say, hey, we have it, but you have other things going on, so you don't want to do. So this is a way to actually benefit from technology that you own, but you actually don't use. Let me see how we're going to do it. So benefit from, it's going to be unused. Technology. So, I may have certain knowledge in a specific subject which I could teach, but right now I'm using my skills and time for other things, and I can't really use my skills, okay? Here it applies to technology. We have a business buyer, okay? Or BMW may have special technology. They're not really using it because whatever reasons, but they can say, hey, we can license it to someone else. We can make some money out of it. So these are some of the major advantages. Disadvantage. Number 1 is that once you're licensing, you have a loose control. doesn't mean, pay attention, this is not losing control, okay? Lose. You have some control, but the control is not very tight. You give it to them, but you're not really sure how they're going to use it, what they're going to do with it. You know, whether they're going to modify, they're going to sell it to competitor without paying you, whether they're going to violate their contract and all the other things. So you have some control, but the control is relatively loose, okay? You're still giving your technology, giving your know-how to a potential competitor. Disadvantage number 2 is discoordination. If the company is yours, if the technology is yours, and if the product is yours, you can decide which markets to enter, how to price the product based on the technology. But if you license it, suddenly another company has your technology, another company has your product, and that company may choose to enter a third market if you didn't put it in. They may choose to have a different pricing strategy. They may choose to do whatever they can do, which is not specified in your contract. Well, sometimes you may need to coordinate your operations in many different countries. But if you license the technology, you actually cannot coordinate because they are an independent business that they can use the technology any way they want. So this could be a potential problem down the road. And major disadvantage number 3 is that you could lose a know-how, or based on this know-how, you could lose a core competence. That's a significant risk. This is what Japanese did, and this is exactly what Chinese are doing these days. These days, Chinese are encouraging all sorts of licensing agreements and all sorts of joint ventures in which they basically learn, and they learn real fast, and they are acquiring the know-how where they become significant competitors down the road. This is what the Japanese were doing in the 60s, the 70s, and especially in the 80s. The Japanese will be doing a lot of this stuff, and they will be essentially doing a lot of learning. They do the licensing for the main reason of acquiring the know-how, and then we say to replicate the core competency. Now, part of a solution to these problems is that of cross-licensing. And cross-licensing is an agreement between, let's say, it's going to be you and me. I will give you this technology for you to use, but you're going to give me that technology. And if you abuse the technology, meaning you don't use it the way we agreed, I'm going to abuse your technology. In other words, when cross-licensing, I hold your technology, you hold mine, and we hold each other hostage. Okay? So you can't do whatever you want to do, and I can't do whatever I want to do. If I want to do something, we coordinate. So cross-licensing mitigates or lowers or reduces some of these disadvantages. It doesn't solve the problem, but at least it reduces it partially. And that's basically licensing. Number 4 is franchising. Franchising is fairly easy if you understand that it's a specialized form of licensing. So it is a type or form licensing. So it's got pretty much all the advantages and basically all the disadvantages of licensing with minor modifications. So here, you don't simply sell the technology to the licensee, so we got a franchisor, okay, and franchisee, but you also have strict rules according to which the franchisee must comply. So you got McDonald's, you gotta have the menu, you gotta have the different things called this way, you gotta have so many counters, you gotta have this, you gotta have that, you gotta have so many tables, you gotta have whatever it might be. You provide a long list of requirements which the franchisor must comply with so that they can have your brand name, like McDonald's, like Subway. Okay, so franchising basically attempts to resolve some of the issues associated with disadvantages, like lose control. Here, you basically tighten the control. In this case, it's not a technology. In this case, it's a know-how. It's business operations. There's no special technology about McDonald's, but you got special know-how. How to run McDonald's is a, special type of operation. You got their products. Same thing applies, of course, to the different types of coffee shops like Starbucks. Okay, you got these 27 products, and this is how you do them. There's a little bit of learning, but you maintain tight control over the quality of the products. Their naming, their maybe sizes, small size, mid-size, large size. They call them whatever grande, and I don't know. So the idea here is that you at least tighten some of the control. Let's see what we got. So advantages similar to licensing. The key here is, the key difference is that you have tighter control, and you can have, on top of all the other things, you add quality control. You control the quality of the coffee or the quality of the hamburger. Okay, when they, KFC, came back home to my home country of Bulgaria, and they tried running the operation, the first thing they discovered, as they did pretty much at the same time in Russia, is that our chickens are different than the American chickens. So when they made the chicken, whatever, wing or burger or whatever the chicken thing is, it tastes different, okay? Well, they want it to taste the same, okay? Well, now, why would it taste different? Well, it will taste different because Bulgarian chicken is a hell of a lot healthier than the American type of a chicken. Meaning, chicken raised under Bulgarian conditions with our Bulgarian food and everything else is a whole lot better. We even let the chickens run around, okay? It's called open range. Well, they want to keep them in a cage. Okay, they want to feed them with this, and that. So they say, no, your chicken doesn't taste like ours, okay? Meaning, your chicken is healthy. We are selling junk food. We're going to maintain the junk standards, okay? You got to keep them in cages. You got to feed them this, and this. You got to make them, fattier, because our chickens are not as fatty, okay? They run around. Our chicken is in a cage. The chicken has no way to move. It sits all day long. If it sits all day long, the muscle does not develop. Yeah, it grows, but it doesn't develop. So the muscle remains tender, okay? So they started changing. So you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to. So they changed the whole operation so that now a chicken raised in Bulgaria is raised in exactly the same unhealthy way. Meaning we raise now for KFC the same sick chickens that they raise in the US and now in Germany and everywhere around the world. And they maintain their quality. In this case, it's the quality of taste. It tastes now in Bulgaria the same as it tastes in the US. Now that it's unhealthy is a completely different stuff. That bothers me. But people who eat in KFC, they don't care about health, right? If they do, they wouldn't be eating at KFC and McDonald's, all right? The point is, they maintain the quality that they want to maintain. It's a whole different subject if it's good or not good for the consumer. All right, let's see what else we got. We got number 5. And number 5 is joint venture. What are you guys laughing? Yeah, I mean, you haven't seen what's called a CAFO on movies or documentaries. A CAFO is a special operation where you have what's called an animal farm. It's a farm factory where you raise animals, and the animals just sit in a little cage. They can't move. They got a feeder. It's called a feeder lot in front of them. They just eat and eat and eat, and they grow fat. They don't move. They're, cramped to each other. So if they're cramped to each other, you got in one building 2,000 animals, maybe 5,000 chicken, maybe 1,000 cows. You got huge diseases, so they load them up on antibiotics. When you eat a little of those chicken or beef, you eat an awful lot of antibiotics, which destroys your immune system and destroys your stomach and digestive system, okay? And that's why junk food is really, really terrible for you. And that's the standard they want to maintain, okay, for whatever reason, industrial reason or profit reasons. I don't want to get into that. Anyway, number 5, joint. Venture. And a joint venture is simply a firm owned by 2 or more companies. A different way of saying is 2 companies get together and they decide to create and open a brand new business. Of course, owned by the 2 of them or owned by the 3 of them. And joint venture, the main advantages is that you share the cost. So main advantage, share cost. So, I'm going to do this up here. Advantage 1, cost sharing. You share the cost with your partner. You share risk, becomes advantage number 2, risk sharing. When you have a partner in the local country, the most important part is that you gain local knowledge. You gain local knowledge. Your partner, so let's say you're a Finnish company and you want to expand in Turkey, you're going to join or you're going to make a joint venture with a Turkish company, okay? And the Turkish company will know things about culture, about politics, about consumer behavior, about consumer preferences, about local marketing. You try do your Finnish advertising in Turkey and it probably won't work, okay? So here you gain a lot of local knowledge. From your local partner. So one of the very main reasons to do a joint venture with a local company is that the local company has a lot of knowledge about the market. You also gain a lot of political, let's say, protection or connection or whatever you're going to call. If you got a local company, the local company is likely going to be politically connected. They'll know the politicians, they'll know the laws, they know how to lobby and all the other things. If you're a 100% foreign company, it doesn't sound or doesn't look good to local people, to local politicians. But if it's a joint venture, politicians will actually think of it more as a local company than as a foreign company, and they won't do terrible things that they would typically do to foreigners. All right, so that's a major advantage right there. In other words, advantages, political considerations in general. Disadvantage is very similar to, well, let's just call it in general, know-how risk. You risk that your partner will steal the technology, or will learn the technology, or will develop the technology, or will modify it. In other words, whatever your know-how in your technology is, you're sharing it with your partner, and again, you don't know what the partner is going to do with your technology. So, the same disadvantage again, that's number one. Number two is lose control of the know-how and technology. It repeats, it's the same problem again. And a major disadvantage could appear to be divergent goals. So, we together have our joint venture in that particular place, and I got specific goals, but you got completely different goals from me. So, I'm trying to achieve something, but you don't care about it. So, the problem of diverging or divergence goals could become a big problem when I have one type of goals and you have totally different types of goals, and I'm trying to achieve my goals, but I can't because you're not cooperating, because you got completely different goals. So you have to make sure that when you have a joint venture, that the goals of the joint venture are the same, that the two companies who make the joint venture, they are pursuing the same goals, whatever they are. Because if they are different, you're going to get into a lot of problems down the road. And then, especially if the joint venture is 50-50, who controls, who decides, who determines? Usually, divergent goals is the most common reason why these joint ventures typically fail. Let's see what else I have here. Part of divergent goals is also what's called, sometimes separate, conflict of interest. In other words, the two partners in the joint venture will have interests that conflict, okay? Or your partner may have very different interests and goals in mind. Of course, when we say interest, we mean basically goals. Okay, and now we move to number 6, which is avoiding most of these disadvantages but introducing new disadvantages. Wholly owned. Wholly, is it? No, it's single. Oh, double L. Oh, they got it double L. Wholly owned. Wholly owned subsidiary. In a wholly owned subsidiary, avoids the conflict of interest, avoids the divergent goals, it avoids the loose control, it avoids the know-how risk. Okay, I can go on. It avoids discoordination problems. It avoids all of the other problems. So most of the problems that you will face with the previous one, you will avoid them over here. There is also no technology transfer over here. All right? So you got the advantages here are that it avoids disadvantages in the other ones. But there are some disadvantages. And the disadvantages, because you own your operation in a foreign country, you're considered to be a foreign country, you may be politically vulnerable. You may be politically vulnerable. You are considered a foreign company, so if the government gets in trouble, they can just tax you more, they can just nationalize you more, or for purely political reasons, to please the local people, they can do some sort of a damage. They can say, as they like to say in Bulgaria to Metro, no, you cannot take your profits back. We are losing capital. All right? So politicians will do that. They said, oh, it's okay to bring your capital, but now they're changing the rules of the game on you. So political vulnerability is a major disadvantage. A major disadvantage is a huge amount of capital. Huge amount of capital. You make a huge amount of capital, and you make a huge commitment. You may also lose strategic flexibility. Let me see what else I got here. Huge capital. You can say it's very expensive or very costly. And another major disadvantage is that you don't have a local partner to help you with laws, to help you with politics, to help you with other things. So you get relatively little local help. Of course, you can and you will hire local consultancy to help you set up your business, local lawyers, local businessmen, but it's not the same as they are part of your business. It's not their business, they're just consulting you and charging you by the hour. So, local help, you don't get an awful lot of it. Let's try here one major advantage which I never really outlined, as in the previous over here, is major disadvantage in a joint venture is the attempt to merge or marry different corporate cultures. So, different corporate cultures. Imagine having Germans and Italians a joint venture somewhere, could be in Italy, could be in some other country, and Germans want to run it the German way, but Italians run it the Italian way, right? They take it easy and all the other things, you know the differences in culture. Or, to be more extreme, you have a joint venture of Germans and Greeks, okay? And now you know what is the common perception about Greeks. You know, they come late to work, they take early lunches, they take extended lunch breaks, they go early for, for the evening and all those things. So, a general problem which I missed in joint venture is that you have very different corporate cultures. Especially it could be very different when you introduce, let's say, Germans trying to run a business in the Arab world. Of course, they try to run it the German way, but Arab culture does not really value anything of the Germans' value, like time, speed, precision. These things don't mean anything there, okay? I mean, 10 minutes later, 2 days later, it's the same thing anyway, okay? So, here, you usually get a lot of problems with culture, especially like American companies trying to run, let's say, business in Latin America. This happens all the time. Western European companies trying to run business in Eastern Europe. Again, big problems. Or in Russia, or in the Arab world. Or, I don't even want to talk about running a business in Asia. So here, you got to marry different, let's say, different cultures, different corporate cultures, and that could prove to be a nightmare. Well, here a major advantage is that you avoid these corporate culture problems. Corporate culture issues, you avoid them. All right, and that's pretty much it. So that's section number 2. Oh, let me delete. We've got about 10, 15 more minutes. So let me delete here. So section 1 was entry decisions. Section 2 was entry mode. Number 4 was, again, number 4. Let me copy. Number 4, franchising. I'm just copying. Number 5 was joint venture. Number 6 is wholly owned subsidiary. Section or subsection number 3 is, these are the entry modes. So now we need to select a mode or select entry mode. So these are the modes, these are your options. Now the question is, how do you select it? And how do you select it? Depends first and foremost on your core competence. What is your core competence? How are you better than them? So, your core competence could be one of 2 types. It could be technological, and if it's technological, you will prefer one type of entry mode, or it could be management know-how. So, is it based on business technology? Know-how sometimes is the same as business process. Now for you over here, there's on page 525 for your reference. Over here, camera, right? You can zoom in and hold for about 15-20 seconds. You have a short summary telling you each entry mode 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, major advantages, major disadvantages. It just gives you a short, sweet summary table of the main advantages and the main disadvantages. You zoom in good, right? Okay, thank you. So, page 525, page 525 is that nice little sweet table. It gives you all the basic stuff about advantages and disadvantages. So, when you are selecting a mode, it will depend on your core competence and the type of competence. If it's technology, you're going to be favoring one type of entry, and if it's know-how, you're going to be favoring different type. So if it's technology, you're going to avoid. So if it's technology, avoid. You're going to avoid licensing in joint venture. This just is a simple example. I'm not going to get into this. And so technological know-how. And the other key consideration, let me see. Okay, I'm just going to put it separate. Let's do this as a separate one. It will also depend on whether your core competence is temporary or permanent. If you have a technology which you believe or expect to be temporary, you will choose one type of a strategy of an entry mode as opposed to technology which you have or source which you have which you believe to be permanent. So you have some specific technology, a little bit of a better DVD or a little bit of a better camera, but you know that competitors are going to catch up with you within 1 or 2 years. Or you got the iPhone and you know that Samsung's going to catch up with you, whether it's the operating system. You can choose a very different strategy, including licensing and joint venture, if you know that it is temporary. So if it's temporary, you will play quicker and faster. You're going to try to get more profit more quickly because you know that the competitors will catch up with you within 1, 2, or 3 years. It same applies including for cars and for car technology. You got this special engine that makes the fuel injection, whatever, more economical. But you know that as soon as you put it in the engine, Mercedes is going to take it apart. It's called reverse engineer, and they're going to catch up with you within 5 years. So it's very important to think, is it temporary or is it permanent? And your strategy will be totally different, meaning your entry mode will be totally different depending on how you perceive to be your core competence. Let's see what else. And the other, of course, number 3, will be, let's see, competitive pressures. How you enter the market will be determined to a great degree about the competitive pressures, and when we say competitive, we also mean cost pressures. Well, the main competitive pressure is cost. Do you have a lot of cost pressures? You don't have a lot of cost pressures? How are they and all the other things? I don't want to get into the details because I gotta be finishing fairly soon. But in general, this will be a major factor in determining. And let's see, we're pretty much running out of time, huh? Yeah?
Yes.
You want to finish, or maybe we can try 5 or 10 minutes to give you quickly the Greenfield of ventures or ventures or acquisitions, or you'll just prepare on your own.
Is it an exam? Because in strategic management it's not.
Well, you'll have to all right, we continue. Section number 4. 10 more minutes for Norm, right? Especially for you.
Thank you.
Greenfield.
But we have done that with the guy who teaches us once when you were not here.
That's true.
Yes, I can show you in the...
Yeah, well, but I have to cover it, so I'll take it.
But we have done it in international business.
Hmm?
We have done it in international business.
Which one?
Greenfield Ventures.
Yeah, Greenfield Ventures. Here we got basically versus acquisitions, which are the various advantages and which are the disadvantages. Greenfield is very, acquisition in this particular case. acquisition is very quick, okay? You just buy the company, you're in the market, okay? With a greenfield venture, it's very slow, okay? Acquisition is also, could be expensive. So in an acquisition, you buy the company, you're done. You got things going with the brand name, legally, tax, accounting. With a greenfield venture, you have to build it all from scratch. Well, if you gotta build it from scratch, it's gonna take a long time and it's slow. With the acquisition, is fairly quick. Now, the acquisition could be very expensive. You might be buying an expensive, you might be buying cheap. It's not clear. You know, sometimes the company may be prosperous, so you could be paying very, very well. Sometimes, on the other hand, you could buy a struggling company dirt cheap, okay? So, that's a possibility. In an acquisition, you can have problems with corporate culture. You already are working with a bunch of Bulgarians or with a bunch of Mexicans, okay? They don't want to work like Germans, okay? So you may have a culture clash, okay? Well, if it's a greenfield, you build it just the way you want it, and you build the culture just the way you like it. So the culture is what you want it to be. In the other case, the culture is whatever is there, okay? They've been running this business for 15 years. They've been a failing business. You acquire them. You are acquiring a culture of failure, okay? Let's see what else we have. Now, risky. When you're choosing between a greenfield, you need to consider risky. Well, the greenfield operation has one set of risks, while the acquisition has a completely different set of risks. We can't say one is riskier and one is less risky. They just have very different risk profile. Let me see what else. And now we need to consider, there is a little section over here, why acquisitions fail. In other words, hey, when we make an acquisition, why acquisitions fail. And a lot of times an acquisition simply fails because you overpay, because it becomes too expensive for you. It becomes too expensive, you overpay, that's a big problem. I already covered. You make an acquisition, a very common failure is culture clash. The two cultures cannot sync up between them. Another common risk and therefore reason for failure of acquisition is management turnover. You acquire the company is okay, but management, the old management doesn't like the new management, the new business, the new ideas, the foreigners, and old management leaves, and a lot of the advantages and knowledge of the company leave with management. So managers can leave, and if the old managers leave, then your acquisition becomes risky. Or even worse, the old managers, knowing what they're doing, they will leave and form a competing company, okay, that will compete directly with you. So management turnover is a big problem. Management philosophy. management philosophy. The old management has one type of business philosophy and understanding, and the new management's got a completely different philosophy, especially if one is a Western business and the other one is an Eastern business. Completely different management philosophy. Company culture and bureaucracy. Bureaucracy. You can have bureaucratic problems, bureaucratic haggling over power struggles, okay? All of these are some very, very common reasons for acquisition failures. And all of these represent significant risks and disadvantages of acquisitions. Making an acquisition work is difficult. 80% of acquisitions typically fail. So most acquisitions fail. Okay, that's important to understand. And which one you choose basically depends on your circumstances. All right, that's a quick and easy 5-minute one, right? For Nora, right? Good enough? Finished? Okay, well, thank you for the course. I hope you actually learned well and had a good time here. All right? Okay?